All right, I think we're live. Awesome. Hey everyone, welcome back to Worldhoppers, where we are a collaborative channel of different sci-fi, fantasy booktubers across the community who come together to talk about books that we love and sometimes don't love. And all of our profits from the AdSense revenue and the merchandise sales do go to various charities that will rotate on a month-to-month basis. So yeah, if you want merch, check it out. Links are in the description box. Today we are talking about reading habits. We did do part 1 of this video that's already been uploaded if you want to check it out. We are doing part 2 today. So we did leave off on question number 6, which is one book at a time or several at once. So I will go first. For me, this one is, I think, one physical book at a time. Like if I'm physically reading a book, I like to concentrate on that one book, but then I can also be listening to an audiobook of something different, usually in a different genre, because I usually physically read fantasy and listen to thrillers or contemporaries. So that's for me. I can't do multiple physical books at once, but I can do one audiobook, one physical.
I think it's very dependent for me on the book. If I'm reading, so right now, actually, at the time we were filming this, I am reading both The Underground Railroad and Spinning Silver, because The Underground Railroad is a lot heavier, and I feel like it's not a bingeable book. I mean, maybe for some people, but it's quite heavy. It touches on a lot to do with the horrors of slavery, and so I feel like that's not a book that I'm like, I'm going to sit down and enjoy this today. So whereas a lot of other books I read, I like to just sit and binge. So preference, I usually prefer to just sit with one book, but there are some books that if I only read that one, I'm probably going to put myself in a reading slump. So then I kind of have to pick up other things along the way. And then I think also it depends on age range. So if I'm reading like adult fantasy and then YA fantasy, sometimes I don't really do too many like multiple adult fantasy books at once, because that can get a little overwhelming, especially if it's high epic fantasy. But if you're reading like a fun, I'm thinking about like Warrior of the Wild, which was hardly even fantasy. It was like a Viking inspired setting, and it was super cute and precious. And that is not a book that I was like, wait a second, I don't know what's happening now, because I pick up something else. So I prefer one at a time, but I will read several if I feel like reading one is going to put me into a reading slump.
Yeah.
Am I up now?
You seem so enthused.
No, I didn't know it was me. I tend to read definitely more than one at a time. It's very rare that I'm only reading one book. I'm trying, and I've said this before in the past, like I'm going to try to keep it to 3 maximum. But then I will inevitably find myself reading 5 or 6, and I need to stop, because I will get so discombobulated. And especially because most of what I read is fantasy. So I'll be like, it's not that I get confused about it. It's just that then obviously it's taking me so much longer to read each book because I'm reading multiple. But I do like to have at least 2 going, just because I'm such a mood reader. So I try, though, like my new goal in my head is 1 non-fantasy, whether it's just like a general fiction, literary fiction, historical, contemporary, but I don't read a lot of that. And then 1 or 2 fantasies. So hopefully I'll be able to keep that. But
I think I used to read more books at once before, but I don't know. I have such an obsessive kind of bingeable, not that my personality is bingeable, but I mean like within my personality, it lends me to binging things. Yeah. So I like being able to just sit and be like, okay, I want to really dive into this book. But I feel like I used to be more like Deshauna, what you're describing. I think the excitement when I first started doing BookTube made me want to read all the things, and then also you want to do all these buddy reads, and sometimes the buddy reads overlap, or there's a readathon. And so you're like, okay, well, I'll read this for the readathon. I've got this buddy read going. And then this is a fun one I'm reading because I heard it was good. But now I'm just like, I just want to sit with 1 or 2 books at a time.
Yeah, this has definitely changed for me over the years. Before BookTube, I was definitely a 1 book at a time person. And the longer I've been doing BookTube, the more I'm comfortable reading multiple books at once. But the way that I've done it has kind of changed too. So when I first started doing it, it was definitely like one book per format. But now I like to read the same book in multiple formats. Like basically I need to have a book in each format, but sometimes I'll have a book in two formats. And so, because what format I read is kind of just dependent on what I'm doing. Like if I'm driving or cleaning, then I'm audiobooking. But then I have audiobooks that I really like to read while I'm listening. So it just really depends on the book. I used to also be very like strict about not reading the same genre in different formats, or like more than one genre, or more than one book in the same genre. Like I wouldn't read two fantasy books. But now, as long as they're like fairly different, it's usually not a big deal. And then if I find myself like getting confused or feeling like they're too similar, then I just like pause one and pick up another. And also the other thing that plays into it is kind of like buddy reads and stuff, and a little bit of mood. I feel like sometimes I don't have like a binge reading personality or habit, and sometimes I just like a little bit of variety. So sometimes if I'm stuck in the same world for too long, I just feel like I want to read something different. And I found that if I'm only reading one book, then that ends up with me like just not reading for a little while, versus if I just spice it up and read something else, then I'm just like reading more often. So like that's really helpful to read more for me.
Yeah.
I feel like there was something else I was going to say about that, but I don't remember. Oh, buddy reads. Sometimes with buddy reads, I do like scheduled buddy reads. And so like I read a section and like I can't continue on.
Right.
I couldn't continue on. So then I like having other things. So I like to read. I usually read 3 things at once. I'm trying to work on making it more like 2, because like Deshauna was saying, like the more you're reading, the longer it takes to finish things. So I'm trying to keep it to 2, but usually it's 3 things. And I found that if I'm reading 4 things at once, then one of them inevitably gets backburnered anyway. So I try not to read 4 things at once. Sometimes it still happens if it's like a buddy read situation or something. But yeah, 2 to 3 is kind of my sweet spot. But it definitely took like a couple years to get there. It was definitely not how it used to be.
Along those same lines, I think that there are some people that think that I've seen people say, how can you read multiple books at the same time and not lose track and not get confused? I don't feel like you're really giving it your full attention. It's not fair to the author, those sorts of things. And I can understand for some people, it doesn't work for them, and that's fine. But I always kind of compare it to, I can be watching 2 different TV shows, and kind of what Deshauna was saying about being in a certain mood. So, there's some shows that I feel like I have to really be in the mood to watch. And then there's some shows you just kind of throw on. And I kind of equate that, like my husband and I are currently watching Demon Slayer, which is like a shonen, and it's easy. You just throw it on. It's fun. And like, you can watch a couple episodes and then be done. You don't have to like really sit and take it all in and really analyze what's happening. But then there are other shows where it's like a commitment almost. And that's similar to me and how I feel about adult fantasy versus YA. Like, not that all YA is just frivolous, fun, whatever, but a lot of times they're shorter and they're a little more digestible. I will say I'm impressed at people who can read several epic fantasies at the same time, because I just find with epic fantasy, I really want to sit, like Malice, for example, I had to put down because I'm like, okay, this one, I need to really focus on what's happening, or I don't feel like I'm going to get everything out of it that I'm wanting to get out of it. And so I think it just depends on the book too. It depends, like Deshauna had pointed out, like the mood you're in. Do you feel though, do any of you feel like there's validity for you personally in the idea, like Jade brought up, that if there's too many at once, that like maybe one of them gets pushed off, or like you inevitably aren't focusing on it as much?
Probably. I honestly have always kind of just stuck to one physical book at a time, so I'm probably not the best person to like ask. But yeah, if I'm reading multiple adult epic fantasies, it goes back to like, I just need to start binging series for the same reason.
Right.
Because when I start like 12 different epic adult fantasy series, like no matter what, I'm like gonna lose track of who's who in certain series, or be like, wait, where did we leave off with this one now? I just need to start binging. So I guess it's not really like I'm in the middle of a like single physical book. It's more like I'm in the middle of multiple series, and I need to get better about that.
Does that make you a better reviewer?
No.
The other thing that I do that is probably a little bit weird and different is that I'm not like super strict about it or anything, but when I have a physical book, I will sit down and tab it out. I'm sure people have seen in some of my videos that I have a bunch of tabs, and those aren't like things that I think are interesting. I like to create reading schedules for myself. They're like goals, but they're very loose. Like I'm not like super strict about it, but I'll either sit down and divide the book into 14 sections or 10 sections, depending on how long the book is. And the idea is that like, I don't want to take longer than 10 or 14 days to read this book. So I try to sit down every day and read at least one section. And like I said, I'm not super strict about it, but it does help. Like if I'm really close to reaching one of my tabs, then I'll kind of like push through and like make sure I get there. It just gives me like little mini goals to read each day. And sometimes I skip days. Like I said, I'm not super strict about it. And sometimes when I am reading more than one book, if I happen to have, because I like to read things in multiple formats. So like I might have a book on physical and ebook, and then physical and audiobook, but I'll have them both physically so I can tab them out. And I'll sit down and read one to one section, and then I'll switch and read the other one to the other section. It just helps me kind of like keep things going, which is a really weird way to read. I know most people don't do things like that.
I think that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
I'll add too, part of what I don't love about reading too many books at once is kind of what you were saying about one of them kind of gets pushed off, is that if I'm reading, let's say 3 books, and I could be liking all of them, but there might be one that I like the most, then, that third one is the one that I'm going to focus on the least. And it might even be to a point where I'm like, I'll just like DNF it for now, not because it was bad. But then sometimes you're like, I feel like I'd have to restart it. So maybe I'll just like, but then you're like, well, that's dumb because it wasn't your absolute favorite that it got pushed away. And so I don't know if that makes
something
sense.
I like about how I tab out the books and try to just keep going in all of them. So like, even if in like the one that I'm enjoying the most, I might read more than my daily allotted, but at least I'm trying to read my daily allotment each day in each book or whatever.
I feel bad, Deshauna. You had to handle some.
Yeah.
So popular.
Oh, no, not really.
we were still discussing the same.
On the same question.
Yeah. But the next question is a little less discussion heavy, I think. Just reading at home or everywhere.
I have an announcement. It's not that exciting, but I live in North Texas. It hardly ever snows. We were supposed to kind of get snow last night, and it didn't happen. And Justin just sent me a picture. It's snowing outside.
Oh, yay.
That's so exciting.
I feel like there are some people who live in cold places that are like,
that's not a big deal.
You're excited about the snow, but yeah, Texas or like, yeah, there's some places where it's like it's foreign, but that's very exciting. For this one. Obviously we're discussing pre-quarantine, I prefer, I think, reading at home. There's just something about the time to like go somewhere. I'm like, I could be reading in this time though. And the only time that I've really enjoyed it is sometimes my husband and I would almost make a date night out of going to the library and like walking around, because the libraries in Arizona are pretty nice. And there's one that has like a really nice outdoor area you can walk around. Then you go in the library and, he often would look around to look for stuff, and I would bring one of my books, and then we would just sit and read for a while and then go home. And it was really nice. But one thing that I had fun doing is I remember when The Toll came out, the 3rd book in the Arc of the Scythe series. And I drove down to the bookstore, I bought the book, and then I just sat down at the cafe and just read a bunch of it that day. And that was really fun, because it was like, not an adventure, but it was like an exciting little, it's kind of adventurous at this point because we're all homebodies, but I just felt like it was like making a day of it. I don't know. So that was fun. But I would say, generally speaking, why is it at home or everywhere? I feel like home is part of everywhere, but generally speaking, I prefer at home.
Yeah, same here. I don't know what they mean by everywhere. Like, are we really?
You mean like anywhere? Like anywhere else? Like you'll just read anywhere? Is that what it means?
I just copy and pasted the questions from.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I think that's what it's like implying. Though,
right?
Like,
yeah.
Do you only read at home, or do you just read everywhere, like wherever you are? Yeah, I mostly read at home, but like if I'm going somewhere and I know I'm gonna wait for a while, I'll bring a book. Like I don't know, like waiting to get my tires changed on my car or something. Like I'll bring a book with me. I don't listen to audiobooks a lot, like hardly ever. So I don't read ebooks that often. So I'll just bring like a physical book with me, but I definitely prefer to be at home.
Yeah, I definitely prefer to read at home. I read a lot in bed, and a long time ago when I was in college and I used to take public transportation, I would read on the train and stuff. I have been known to bring books to parties or family get-togethers. So sometimes, like when the excitement dies down and people are like, sometimes my family will get together and like the guys are watching a UFC fight, and I'm like, I don't want to watch that. So I pull out my book or my phone and read on that or whatever. So, I mean, I think I will read anywhere, but I don't usually go out of my way to read outside of my house. I have occasionally like gone to the library to read, like Elle said. When I was younger, I have been known to go to Barnes & Noble and just sit and read a book instead of buying it. I'll just read it there. I don't usually finish it, but there was this one book that I read like half of it while I was sitting at Barnes & Noble, but I haven't done that in a long time. So yeah, generally I just prefer to read at home.
Are you all able to read in the car without getting sick?
I get so sick.
I do read in the car a lot, like on road trips.
Yeah.
Always read in the car.
I can't anymore.
I could. That would be amazing. I get so sick. I can't.
I used to when I was a kid. I was always reading in the car. But as I've gotten older, I found that even looking down at my phone sometimes, I'll get like dizzy and like woozy.
Yeah, I'm lucky I don't have that. And ever since I was a kid, I've always read in the car. And even like as an adult, when my husband and I go places, he's usually the driver. I don't really like driving. And if it's a long ride, I will usually bring a book because he'll listen to like sports radio, and I just like don't want to listen to that. So and especially when we go on long road trips, I'm always reading.
I know when we flew to both Iceland and Ireland, obviously this is some pretty long flights from Arizona, USA. So I always would have books. I don't know if you guys do this. I'll pack like way too many books when I go places because I'm like, maybe I'll read like before we go to bed. But I'm always thinking, okay, well, like on the plane, right? It's so long. And I know I have terrible motion sickness, but I'll do it anyway. And then on the plane, I'm like, oh, I feel so sick. And I'm like, but it's like the perfect time. You could get through a whole book. The flight.
Planes.
I always read on planes.
I can read on planes for sure. But I often don't because I'm just so freaking uncomfortable, or I'm trying to sleep, or I'm freezing. Like when I went to South Africa, I was just like so cold for like 14 hours.
I hate that. So
that sucks.
I'll admit going on 2 weeks, because when we went to Iceland and Ireland, both those different trips were for 2 weeks, and both of them are much colder than Arizona. So part of what I like to do when I'm going to travel is like wear as much of my belongings on me as possible so that I can because I'm like nervous about, being in a foreign country and not having stuff. So I'll wear my like giant, and when you're in Arizona, you feel like an idiot because you've got like your big old coat on, and they're like, I guess I'll just pretend I'm cold at the airport, but I'll have like all those jackets. But then it's nice because when you're on the plane, if you get cold, you have it. But then if you're getting warm, you can use it as a pillow or something. But yeah, I cannot read on, I'll try, but I always end up feeling really, really nauseous. And then you're like, okay, I still have 5 more hours to go on this plane. If I throw up now, it's going to suck. Like, I don't want to throw up. So,
yeah. And I definitely don't have any kind of motion sickness. And plane rides are always like productivity time. Like I bring my laptop, I always like edit a video until my computer dies, and then I read the rest of the time, like every flight.
Nice.
So jealous. I know when I had to, and it wasn't a very long flight, obviously, but I went to Utah for something when I was in college, and one of my professors was in the seat like right across from us, and we're all like, "Gosh darn it!" Because our professor on the way back, like the trip was over, and she like pulled out her laptop and was working, and we're like, "Oh, she's the best," because she was always so on top of stuff. But I'm like, I'm too dizzy. I can't do it. Okay, so I want one last question that has to do with this. Is anyone here a bathtub reader?
I don't even take baths ever.
I mean, I take maybe like 5 baths a year, and I will read. I have a Kindle, so usually, like, I won't take a physical book in there. My Kindle's not waterproof or anything. I'm just really careful. But also, I will usually audiobook when I'm in the bathtub.
Yeah,
sit and listen. But like I said, it's like 5 times a year.
I think the only time I've ever tried to do the reading in the tub was when I was filming a reading vlog, and I wanted to
just for the aesthetics.
Aesthetic. And I was like, here's me dropping my bath bomb into the bath.
I've definitely done that.
Getting my candles lit in the bathtub. I'm like, I don't actually do any of this. Why am I filming?
Such a liar.
I just get so bored in the bathtub and like uncomfortable. I'm like, this isn't. I'm like sitting here and like, ugh, and like everything's wet. And I can't like touch stuff. And, like, I get hot and like I'm sweating and like now I need a shower because like now I'm sweaty and like I just can't. So, yeah,
that's the thing. I always feel like I have to shower after I take a bath to like wash everything off, and it's like double work. But I mean, it is really relaxing too. So. But I don't do it very often. I have also, when I'm like really, really into an audiobook, I will listen to an audiobook while I'm taking a shower, which is kind of weird.
Well, I want to get one of those Bluetooth waterproof speakers in the shower so that I can do that. I would love one of those, or even like not even for books, just to listen to music and like get ready and like, this day it's gonna be a great day. Like, but so. I definitely acquired from my parents my dad was also a very productive person, but my mom is a very productive person. Neither one of them can sit still for very long. You know, they're always doing something. And I definitely got that from them. So bathtub, like I like baths. Like I don't know. There's something about like, you know what? I just want to take a bath right now. Like get warm and cozy and stuff. But I can't just sit in a bathtub. I don't know how anybody just sits and just like lays there because I'm like, just go to bed then. I don't know.
I'd be so bored.
I can't just lay there. And I've never fallen asleep in a bathtub. I don't even know how people do it. Like I can't fall asleep as it is very easily. So I don't know. I can't fall asleep. That's another plane ride thing. I can't fall asleep sitting up. I can't I am not. I don't sleep easily. So for me. If I'm going to be in the bathtub, I'm going to be like listening to an audiobook or like editing videos. I edit videos on my phone because I film my videos on my phone.
Yeah.
So I'll be like sitting in the bathtub, like editing. Anyway, so yeah, I can't just, the book thing though, like Joshana was saying, then your fingers are all wet and it's,
Yeah, definitely got to use a Kindle or an audiobook.
Yeah. The next question is reading out loud. Or loud, it should be loud, sorry, or silently in your head. Let me edit that really quick. But anyway, who reads out loud?
Not me.
Not I.
Like maybe when I have the baby, I'll like read out loud to the baby. Well, I will. That's a good idea. I will, but
baby books or baby books.
Yeah, I'm going to be reading like I don't know, like some
poppy
horror. We're gonna read War and Peace, Crime and Punishment. Brilliant. Have the best vocabulary.
Genius.
I read silently.
Yeah.
Read silently to your baby. It's just holding your baby.
I do know someone who sometimes will read out loud. I have a cousin who has a booktube channel. Her name's Shannon. Her booktube channel is called That's So Poe. Her and her husband are so cute. But when they buddy read, they'll read out loud to each other.
Aww.
Isn't that adorable?
So I okay, it is cute, but like that would never be a thing for Shauna unless we were troll like being goofs.
Mhm.
But I've heard people say like
books.
What was that?
You guys read like have different tastes in books.
Yeah, but I just not even that, just more of like I feel like if we were to read out loud to each other because we were being goofy, but I know some people think it's really sweet to have someone read to them, but I would be like, let me see it. Just I'll read it myself. Like even in movies when people are like feeding each other like strawberries and stuff, I'd be like, I would smack it and be like, let me feed myself. I'm a grown person. I can eat. I have hands. I'm good. Like I don't like the like let me like read to you or like let me feed you. I've never been like that. So I mean it is cute. I feel like I think it is a nice gesture, but like I'm too like I'll do myself.
Yeah. I think I would like it,
thing.
but Justin doesn't read, so I can't do it.
It sounds fun though. It's like the first true buddy read, you know, before we all started buddy reading via the internet.
Yeah.
I mean it's cute. I don't know what it's called. Like what is that called when you are like you're thinking in your head? I don't know. That sounds stupid, but like your own voice in your head. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because your internal voice.
Yeah, I've heard people say
sub-vocalizing. That's what it's called, right?
Vocalizing.
Sub-vocalizing.
Sub-vocalizing. Okay, because I've heard people say to read faster, you need to stop doing that, and you need to just like look and then absorb. And I'm like, how? I don't know how that works. Like, I think that's why I read slow, is because, you know, if there's, especially if I'm not listening. Well, even with the audiobook, like the characters have different voices to me, and so when I'm reading, like I hear different voices, and I'll actually read what's happening and think it in my head. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, I don't know when people say they don't do that. I'm like, what? How is that even reading then? How do you retain anything? It doesn't make sense to me.
I do that too. And I've had people ask me, because sometimes I've mentioned I read and listen at the same time. And they've asked me if like, when I do that, if I don't have to sub-vocalize, and maybe that's why I can read faster.
Oh, that makes sense.
I still do. No, I still do. But I just like, I can do it faster because I'm like, I don't know. I'm listening. And so I just do it at the same speed as the narrator, but I still do it.
I will say, I remember being a little girl, and I feel like it's the first time I have a memory of this, like doing this and understanding like your internal voice, because I was, my sister, for those that don't know, I have a sister who's 5 years older than me. And I always wanted to play with my older sister, and she was always like, ugh, just whatever, you're little and annoying. But I remember so vividly, like I always wanted to hang out with her in her room, and she was I think she was reading or doing something, and I was reading, and I was doing that where you're like a really little kid and you're like reading out loud. And she's like, ugh, read in your head. And that's like my first memory of being like, what? And like thinking like you can read in your head, and then from there I did it. I had to have been really little, because I don't know if that makes any sense. Like it was, I don't know how old I was. I was probably like 4, I don't know, 5. How old are you when you first start learning to read? But I feel like because there's that age where you there's like a certain age period where you don't really have actual memories necessarily, like you don't remember thought process in those moments, and there's a certain age where you start to remember what you thought in those moments. And that's one of my first memories of thinking, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I remember going into silently reading in my head, but I don't know anyone who doesn't do that as an adult. I'm very curious if there is someone. I would love to know why, because I feel like it sounds like we're kind of making fun of people who, I don't know.
I mean, people read differently. I definitely have like known people on the internet that don't sub-vocal. Like I've seen people say that they literally, like people who read super, super fast, they literally like look at the page and like a movie plays in their head, and they're not actually like reading. They just like see it. I'm just like, that's crazy. And they'll read so fast because it just like happens like that. And I don't know how they do that, but I mean, people's brains work differently.
This must be why because I do feel like I am a slower reader. I think it's because I do a combination of doing that, the sub vocalization, and then visualize it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I can't do just like look at the page and I don't know. That's
I
crazy.
don't think I'm like trying to, I guess it's one of these things, just like with seeing stuff in your head. I'm like, what do people mean by this though?
Right.
Because when you guys are saying like hearing it in your head, I'm like, when I'm reading, I don't actually hear anything in my head. I'm just like reading words.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Like, I guess if I thought about it, I would think like, oh, this character probably sounds like this. But like while I'm reading, I'm not necessarily like hearing it. So I guess
I'm totally hearing myself think when I'm reading.
I guess I don't know what that like is defined as, or like what that actually is
No,
in your head. So I don't know what it
brains.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like try to read today and be like, what am I hearing? What am I seeing? I'm like overthinking
like early memories. This is a little bit off track, but I'm curious what your oldest memory is. Like, you know, supposedly you don't have a lot of memories from when you're like a baby, right?
Right.
And my mom was really surprised because I remember a couple of things from when I was like 2.5.
Wow.
Just like little things I remember, but I've described these things to her, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that definitely happened." And they're not like things that she would tell me. So my earliest memories, not that I have a lot, but are from like 2.5.
I don't know. I remember, and I've joked with my mom because she's like, I can't believe you remember that. You were so little. And it like fills her with shame that I remember this. So, you know how some bicycles have like cute little baskets?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're in the front, but sometimes they're in the back. Like there's that little platform. And then, they thought it would be nice to like put me in the basket. And I fell out of the basket and I hit my head on the street. And my mom is always like, she's like, there's not a worse sound in the world than hearing your kid's head smack into something. And she remembered the sound. And like, I remember falling out. And so I told my mom, I was like, maybe that's like what smacked me into like, you know, being able to have like, well, she's like, why do you remember that of all memories? Why do you remember that one?
I feel like mine is, I was probably 2.5 or 3. I was probably 3. And I had a really severe allergic reaction to penicillin, which I'm allergic to. And I had like full body hives and like a really bad fever.
Oh.
And I remember being in my grandparents' house and they had like a linoleum floor and like laying down with my face on the floor because it was cold. It like felt good. That's like the earliest one I feel.
So both of us have not the greatest first memory.
Yeah.
So part of why we split this up into a couple of different videos is because of this next question, which is, do you read ahead or even skip pages? Because we could definitely probably have a whole long chat about this.
I never do this.
I do not.
Never. I know some people like read the end first, or like if they just need to know what happens, they'll read the end because they just like, I don't know, maybe some people have a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen. And I never do this. The only time this happens is if I'm like really into the story. Sometimes I will accidentally read like the next page. And so what I've started doing, it's one reason why I like audiobooks, because like I can't do that. But if I feel like I'm getting that excited about something and I don't want to spoil myself, I will cover up the pages and like not let myself read ahead, because I don't want to spoil myself even for something that happens on the next page. Like I want to get to it in the right order. So I never do this.
I also don't ever read ahead. The only thing I'll do is I'll look to see how long a chapter is, but I'm like, please don't look at the word. Please don't look at the last word. Like I like,
yeah. And I've trained myself to be really good about not reading when I'm like flipping through pages, because like I said, I like to tab out my book. So a lot of the times I'm like, I just look at the like tiny corner where the page number is. And like, it took practice, but somehow I've trained myself like never to read what's on those pages.
Yeah.
So I kind of what Jesse, you were saying, where you look ahead to see when the chapter ends. Yeah. There will definitely be times where I'm like, ugh, when am I done with this character and I get to go back to this character? So I'll like flip ahead and be like, gosh darn it, it's 50 pages before I get back to this point of view. So I guess it's like, I mean, it's not really reading ahead. That's just, I kind of is in a sense, because you're like, time frame wise, you're like, okay, good. Like we'll be back with this person soon or something. It's not, I don't know if that counts because not like I flip to the last page and like read the ending or something.
I mean, do you accidentally sometimes read the end? Yeah.
One recently, and I was actually like, gosh darn it. So when I got my arc of Rhythm of War, I like flipped to the end to like see how many pages, because I was trying to figure out, because the arc looks so much thinner than the actual copy. So I was like, how many pages is this? And so I like flipped toward the end and I saw character, something about a character, and I was like, and then so the whole book, I was like, okay, I think that's what happens with this character. But like I also didn't know, because maybe it was like they thought that it had happened or something. Yeah. So I didn't know how it was going to go down, what was going to happen to that person. And I was just like, dang it. So that time, yeah, but not usually. Usually I don't spoil myself.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like read ahead typically, or I don't, skip pages. More like 99% of the time, I don't do this. There have been times where I've skim read heavily, and like I always mention it if I'm talking about a book where I'm like, yeah, I barely read this whole part. Usually it's the ending where it's like I want a DNF, but maybe I'm like, because I'll DNF at 60, 70%. But there are some times where I'm like, it's like so long and I've gone this long, or if it's like the end of a series and I'm like, I read the whole series and like, I kind of want to read it, but like I kind of don't. And it's only happened a couple times, but yeah, I will barely read it. Like I'm just like, okay, looking what words, okay, this character, something happened. All right, they're talking. Okay, next page. Okay, they're talking. Okay. Oh, somebody died. All right, cool. Like, and then I'll go back and look at like a synopsis online or something. But yeah, I've only done that a couple times. And like I said, I always mention it when I do that because I can't talk confidently about it now if I didn't actually read like 20% of the book or something, you know. But
yeah, actually, Joshana, that reminds me, I have done this once, actually. I was reading a thriller and I was really hating it. And it was one of those thrillers that like you didn't know if something supernatural was going on or if it wasn't supernatural. And I think I read like 35% of it, and I just knew that I wasn't going to like it. So I didn't want to read the whole thing, but I did want to know if it was going to be a supernatural or not supernatural explanation. So I went and read like the last 10% of it. But that's the only time I've ever done that. Yeah. But I've done it once. And I was going to say that one time I was buddy reading with Justin. We buddy read 2 books, like not a lot, but it was the second book in the Arc of the Scythe series. And I like the narrator a lot. And so we were listening to the audiobook together, but I had the physical book and I like to read while I listen when I'm on my own. So I was trying that out with him and I found out that doesn't work because like I kind of like read a little bit ahead and I gasped like really loud at what was happening. And he was like, what? And I was like, nothing, because it hadn't happened in the audiobook yet, which was really funny. So
you accidentally kind of sort of spoiled him.
Yeah, I did.
I do this with like battle scenes a lot. If they're not like to my taste, if there's some big battle and it's like 5 pages long and I'll read like half a page or a page into it. And if it's one of these writing styles where I'm like, all right, I get it. Like we're fighting. Cool. I will heavily skim those and just be like, okay, all right, they're still fighting. Okay. All right. Well, okay.
Fighting.
Something's about to happen. And then I'll read like, okay, this person dies and this is how they die. And then, okay, now we're back to just fighting. And
I was going to say skim reading is kind of not necessarily within this question, but I feel like it goes along with it. And so I feel like we can even kind of talk about that is, you know, Joshana said like, yeah, she skims and stuff. So battle scenes, I have gotten so picky about like, I have to really be engaged. And if you kind of, I don't know how to say this without being dramatic, but like if you've kind of ruined my trust in your battle scenes, meaning literally nothing bad ever happens and there's no consequences to them, I'm like, okay, so then they parried and then they dodged and then like they were fine. Or what really frustrates me is when a character will get what seems like an intense injury, so it's exciting in the moment, but then it really doesn't phase them after. And I'm like, what was the point of that then? Why did you make me read? And I think it all comes back to the visualization thing. Like, how much do you visualize it? Because there are some fight scenes that are so vivid, or not just fights, but action scenes. So when I read Skyward, that was a book where I was like, I don't know how much I'm going to like the flight scenes. And they were so good and they're so edge of your seat. And I love those. And I didn't think I'd be able to picture them flying their ships basically, but I could. But then there's been other times where I'm like Shoshana said, like, okay, well, like they're fighting now. And I think it comes down to how they write the fight scene, how you like fight scenes, and kind of contrary to what I was saying before about how I'll read really thoroughly and then picture. There are some fight scenes that I'm like, the same kind of words are being used so much that I guess it's similar to, this is a dumb example, but in music, you have to learn how to sight read, meaning like it's the first time you've ever looked at a piece of music and you have to be able to interpret all of the notes and then like all the rhythms and then accurately play them in tune with the right bowings and whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously what I was talking about before, what we've touched on, where you like see it and then you kind of internalize it immediately. And I feel like there's some fight scenes that I do that for, where I'm just like a whole paragraph, I can kind of like pull it in, if that makes sense. But not all of them. It depends. Like some of them just are more gripping than others, and it's all dependent on your tastes.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes it's just that they feel tedious to me. I'm like, nothing really that drastic is happening. Detailed. We're just fighting, and it's like detailed, but not in like an interesting, like you said, gripping way. Like I'm not invested. You're just giving me this barrage of details of this action, and I don't care about. And then that's why I really love. I'm loving that part of the Faithful and the Fallen series.
Oh my God, I was about to
because John Gwynn does it so well. Like I feel like I'm watching a movie, and like I want to read every word of this battle because like things are happening and it's so cool, and I feel like I'm watching a movie, and so I really enjoy that. But yeah, that's like really the only thing that I'll like. So it's kind of, I don't skip whole pages though, but I will heavily skim battle scenes if they're.
Yeah, because you mentioned Malice, I did remember that while I was reading Malice, trying to be as spoiler free as possible here, something happens and I had to skip ahead to see if a certain perspective was in the book. Or something. And I was like, because I was so shocked and mad. And I was like, I have to know, am I going to see this again? and that's the only time I've ever done that. But oh my God, Malice. Yeah. Like the fight scenes in Malice, I could not skip. The fight scenes in Sword of Kaigen, I could not skip. And oh my gosh, she's so cute. She just wants to be a part of it.
You want to say hi?
Do you have Luna?
What do you skim read, Luna Bear? She looks like a wolf.
She does.
My wolf is joining
the only books that I really like heavily skimmed are the Outlander series. I don't know if any of you all have.
I read the first two.
Okay, so you know how detailed they get. Yeah. There are some books in that series where I was not going to make it through unless I skim read, and it's just because it goes over like the daily life logistics of living in the 1700s, and you're like, hey, this is great, but like I don't need to see them cook their dinner for like the 70th time. It was great. But so that I think that's the only one I've like heavily skimmed to get through it.
I'm just not going to force myself. Like even like I do think that transparency matters because we talk about books online and we're like influencing people in some fashion. So like I always go back to Mistborn because that's really the most egregious instance of this for me is the end of that third book that I legit barely read it. Like I barely read the end of that book. And like, I'm not going to confidently talk about it as if I know all the details of the ending because I don't. And I can't confidently talk about this because I don't know what the frick happened because I just read a synopsis. Yeah. And so, I feel like it's good to, and like, I guess part of our responsibility is to be transparent about it. But just because I'm talking about it online doesn't mean I'm going to force myself to read it if I don't want to.
Yeah, I think that I was going to mention when you were talking about fight scenes, there was a part in Jade City where a character, I was like, all right, finally, like this character's finally gonna, because for a long time they're like, what do I want with my life? And then they finally get to a part where they're like, I'm gonna just mess everything up. And it was written in a way that was almost so passive that it's like they went crazy and they effed everybody up. And I'm just like, that's the scene. Like, it was like, I was so excited for this person to do work. And then I was like, what? And I was so bummed because that was an action scene that I was really looking forward to. And then I was
more detail.
bummed out.
Yeah.
That one I could have used, more details. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you heard Luna. She's upset that I did not stop the video to give her all the attention in the world. So just because that, I feel like that's a juicier question. Was there anything else we wanted to add before going into the next one?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Breaking the spine or keeping it like new?
I don't care.
Keep it like
I know,
new.
like, so bad to say.
When people break the spine, it hurts my soul. But I try not to judge because it's not my book and it doesn't matter.
You would hate my Faithful and the Fallen books because just completely broken.
There's been times in Elle's videos where she'll bend back a cover to like read something, and I'm just like, oh,
I don't break the spine though. It doesn't.
I know,
break
but you're
the
still
spine.
totally like bending. Like when you put it back, it's gonna be all like this.
It's gonna get shoved between a bunch of other books, and it's gonna be fine. It's gonna smash it back in.
I've definitely left comments on her videos about it. Been like, oh my god.
I think you did on someone did on the video we did together, the first line challenge. Someone commented like, "Oh my god, Elle is like bending back the cover."
Oh,
I
yeah.
would only ever leave a comment like that to people who are my friends who would like know that I'm like kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not really serious about it, but it's something that I would like never do. And when I see people do it, I'm just like, oh my god, that's
So if it's like a beautiful edition, and I'm like, whoopsies, I spilled coffee, or so, like that would be terrible, right? But I don't know. I feel like some, especially smaller paperbacks or paperbacks where the spine is bound really tight and the words go like really into the spine. I can't see the words. It's like, it's so much work to be like, I don't want to break this. So like, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to turn around. And I don't really hardcore break the spines. I don't like, some people, they got to do that to, I don't know.
I do that sometimes. I try to avoid it if I can. Like big floppy paperbacks, usually I don't have to break the spine because it flops open wide enough where, like you said, I can read all the words, and I'll try to keep it nice. But yeah, like the Faithful and the Fallen, it's the UK paperbacks, and they're bound so freaking tight. And it's like a little bit taller mass market like size, and I crack those flat and like completely break it.
I know my UK editions of This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet, I'm almost positive the spines are pretty broken because the same UK, the binding for some reason feels really tight a lot of times. And I don't know. I'm not trying to Jade, of course, you're also not trying to like judge us or whatever, but like, I'm always like, it's an inanimate object. Like it's fine. Like I would never do that to someone else. Well, technically the turning the page back, that was Joshana's book, but I didn't break the spine. I wouldn't just yank someone's spine. But like, I'm not going to just, like walk into someone's house and be like, what's this book about? And then like start cracking it. Yeah. But
I kind of like it too for like, I don't know, books that I really love. It kind of like, I have a copy of Diary of Anne Frank that I've read I don't know how many times. That cover is so tattered and that spine is so tattered and broken. And I have a newer copy of it, a hardcover, like that I'll probably keep like nice and pristine. And I think that's why for like my favorite books, I like to own the hardcover and the paperback. Because when I reread, which I do a fair amount of, I want to reread the paperback and just like get into it and like crack it if I want. And,
I'll add that I don't care either way. Like it's your books. I don't care what you do with your books. I don't care what books you choose to own or not own. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect my books. But there are some people that are like, when they see nice looking books on someone's shelf, they're like, not a true bookworm because they're not even clearly, it's a weird like mark of how great of a bookworm you are if your books.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, I didn't realize that like looking at a page meant I had to also like rip it apart.
People have opinions.
I guess people really love the look of a well-loved book, and like you just can tell that it's been read a bunch of times and things like that. It's just not me. I love books that look new.
They do look nice.
I also don't read a lot either, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, people just, I mean, there's those types of people that want to judge and like try to shame you for everything. I've had people about owning so many copies of Wuthering Heights being like, why? And like, because I want to. Because it's like a book collecting, which is separate from like reading books.
Right.
Like, whatever. Leave me alone.
Or I will never understand. I will never understand people who are rude to someone because of how they organize this in their own home.
Yeah.
Why that is I can't think of a more privileged thing and a sense of entitlement that you get upset about somebody organizing their plethora of books in a way that you don't like. Like if it's rainbow and you're like, clearly not a real bookworm. And or like if people, what I think is funny is when people turn their books around. Some people have legit reasons for doing that. What?
I said people get mad about that.
Get mad, and they're like, "Oh, clearly you just care about the aesthetic. You don't even care about your books." And I'm like, "Do you organize your books in any fashion? Do you display your books on a bookshelf? Because you care about it then too. You absolutely. I don't. And there's who cares? Who cares? Cover artists work hard. Also, human beings like things that are pleasant to the eye. It's just how it is. And I think it's ridiculous to think that you can't like a book and then also like its cover or like a certain organization method. It's like they don't have to be one or the other. I can't imagine being that bothered. I mean, I'm bothered right now, but I can't imagine caring. I'm more frustrated that people are judgmental and rude because of how somebody organizes their books or what their books look like. I don't. And which, Jade, I know you're not literally like
totally kidding. Yeah.
So like not what Jade was doing. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, there have been comments that, I mean, probably at some point a lot of us have gotten where people are legit rude to us. And I've seen comments before, like people who make fun of people who have, you know, a lot of books. But I've also gotten comments where people say that they judge a booktuber if they don't have books in their background. And I'm like, what?
No matter what you do, there's somebody that's gonna.
Yeah. I purposely don't film in front of my shelves because I have seen people who say like, oh, I really want to do booktube, but I don't own a lot of books. And it's like, okay, that doesn't matter. Like, so I purposely don't film in front of my shelves.
Owns like no books or like 3 books or something, reads with Cindy.
Yeah.
Got a huge channel. So
I mean, when I first started, I filmed in front of this like little a random like kind of like accent table thing, and I had like some books in there. It was more honestly something you would put plates in or maybe CDs or whatever, but I put my books in there, and I sat on the floor, and that was what I filmed in front of. And it's like I don't care how many books you own. I don't care what books you own. I don't care if you highlight your books, if you dog ear your books, if you break the spine, or if they're pristine. Like I don't care. Actually, that brings us into the next question. The last one pretty well is, do you write in your books?
Never.
No, I really don't either. I have in the past, like, cause I mean, going to school and I have a degree in writing. And so I had to take a lot of English classes, a lot of literature classes as well. And I would write in my books then, like just notating stuff. But I don't know. Because I'm like, I don't go back to it. I tab my books currently, but it's again a thing that I'm not like going back and looking at what I've tabbed. I mostly just tab for then reviewing the book. If there's like something like, oh yeah, that one moment. And for quotes, like quotes to save. Because I keep like a journal or a notebook of quotes I really like. But otherwise, I don't really write in them. And because sometimes my feelings change too, where maybe I really loved this book and then I read the second and the third in the series and I hated them. And so I just want to get rid of all of them. And I actually have a book stamp of like, this book belongs to Jashana, and like, so I'll stamp them. But I don't stamp them right when I buy them because I'm like, let me just wait a minute. I might not love this. And I do like a book plate on the inside where it's just a notepad that's like a Post-it where I'll write like some thoughts, but I'm not writing in the actual book itself.
Yeah.
I also like tabbing, although I feel like when I get really sucked into a book, I don't do a very good job of continuing to tab. I don't know. And some books, like, they just don't have really moments that make me want to tab them. I don't know. But the only time I wrote in something was, I'm so sorry. I hope this doesn't come across like a flex, but like my arc of Rhythm of War, because I did in-depth chats for all the parts, and that book is huge, and so I would tab stuff, but then I started to run out of certain, because I would use certain colors for certain things, and then I was running out of those colors, so then I would just kind of like, I would use a random color, but then like I wasn't really writing notes. It was more of I would have a certain part where I'm like, this is the part I want to talk about. So that's the only time I've ever written in a book. My husband sometimes, every now and then, will write in them, but we go to our local used bookstores. We like to take books in if we don't love them or if we want a different edition or something. And I would feel kind of bad having marked up a book and then taking it in, I don't know. I would feel bad because somebody else, I wouldn't want them to be like, what the heck? I don't care what this random girl thought.
Yeah, that's why I don't write in my books. I actually going to kind of start a different conversation based off of this question. But my book buying habits, I wish I could be the type of book buyer that only buys books after they read them. Like, I think, Joshana, I think you do this where you tend to like borrow books, and then if you love them, you buy them.
Yeah, that's what I try to do.
I want to do that. But the problem is when I have already read a book and I don't already own it, I'm like, oh, but I mean, I could buy it, but like I could buy a new book that I haven't read. And then I like never buy the book. I just never own these books that I love. So I don't do that. So I buy books that I don't know if I'm going to like them or not. Hopefully, I always buy books that I think I'm going to like. But that's so often what I do that. So often the books that I don't like, I will also go to a used bookstore and trade them in. So I don't write in books for that reason, because I just don't know if I'm going to end up keeping it or not. And I only want to like keep books that I know I'm going to reread and really enjoy. And maybe I would like tab them for specific quotes upon reread, but I don't write in books for that.
I say pretty often too, I think people know this, and Joshana knows because she lives here too. Our local used bookstores are so good, and they give you a good amount of store credit for your stuff. And one of them, you don't even have to take in books. They sell instruments, they sell video games, CDs, so DVDs. And so there have been times, like we had this old keyboard, and they gave us so they'll either give you cash or store credit, but not for the same amount. The cash is always a percentage of the store credit. So we usually go store credit because you get more. But I think they gave us like $200 actual dollars for this random keyboard. And we were like, what? And so we're like, shopping spree. All these, and I think for us, first off, the affordability, we can do this because it's like not really costing us much money a lot of times because we have the store credit. So maybe we'll spend like a few dollars more. But there have been times where we have gotten like a lot of books and then still had store credit left over because they're so great at giving you store credit. Yeah. And so for us, we end up with a lot of books, but I don't feel too bad because I'm like, this is helping their business too, and like it's an awesome local used bookstore. And plus it's like, it's a fun thing to do to go to the bookstore, but I am trying. I know, Jesse, like it is fun to just buy like a new book that's like nice and pristine, and it's like so exciting because you're like, oh, I'm gonna sit down with this book this weekend. And but it's like that meme of the guy with his girlfriend. She's like looking because he's looking at the other girl walking by, and that girl is your like current TBR pile, and then the other girl that he's checking out is like a new book or something. I feel like that's definitely true for a lot of us. I am trying to. But sometimes our local used bookstores get new books in too because they're awesome. So one thing though is I'm trying to use NetGalley. I want to use NetGalley more this year and then read these newer books. And then if I, like you were saying, Jesse, if you like it, you can, go get it. I want to try to do that more in general because it's like also reading ARCs and getting up content about newer books is helpful to first-time authors or authors who have like a new book coming out and stuff. So it's a way to help them without necessarily spending tons of money, because if you love the book and or even if you're just discussing it and you didn't love it, but someone else thinks it sounds good, that's going to help the author, even though I don't know, that leads into a whole, like you said, Jesse, it kind of goes into a different conversation. But in general, I just think, I mean, we're almost bordering on like the consumerism conversation, which we don't need to get into. But anyway, yeah, I think I totally get what you're saying, where you're like, well, I read it, so.
Yeah. I don't really write in my books. I've tried to, like, one time I tried to get into annotating, but I've got sticky notes to write on and put in my books. But honestly, most of what I read physically comes from the library. Like during the spine breaking question, I was looking at my shelves and like none of my paperbacks have broken spines, but also like I really haven't read out of a lot of them because a lot of them I bought after I read them. Because a lot of the books that I buy after I've already read them, and I get the physical copies from the library. Sometimes even if I own my own copy, I will try and get a physical copy out of the library because I like
don't want to damage yours.
Yeah, because I like to keep mine nice and pretty. And when it comes to book buying, like I just don't buy a lot of physical books. I don't buy a lot of physical books, but ebooks, I will buy books that I have not read yet. I will buy ones and audiobooks. I'll buy books that I want to read. But physical books, I just honestly don't buy a lot of them. And if I do buy them, they're ones that I've already read. Or actually, I guess I did buy like Oathbringer. I hadn't read it yet, but I knew that I was going to really like it. So
I got you Oathbringer.
Oh, did you? You're right. I bought Radiance, the one before it, which I think I actually bought that after I read it. So.
Like, I think I got you Oathbringer, but you checked it out from the library.
Because I didn't want to mess it up.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's right. I want to mention really quick, because you talked about audiobooks, how you'll buy those and stuff. Do you use a certain subscription, like a certain one?
So I go back and forth with Audible. Like I'll sign up for the subscription and then I rack up too many credits because I don't use them fast enough. Hold on.
While Jade's doing that, I'll add, if you haven't heard of Libro FM, highly recommend it. It's an audiobook service, but it's through your like local bookstores. So they get the money from, it's the same price as Audible, and you get the credits and everything, but it helps out local used bookstores, which I think
is
good.
One thing that's nice, I haven't used Libro FM very much. I've looked at it a little bit. Hey, what's really nice about Libro FM is my problem with Audible is when I rack up too many credits, I can't cancel until I use those credits because you lose them. Yeah. But with Libro FM, from what I've read, you can pause or cancel your subscription and you don't lose your credits. So I think that's really awesome. But honestly, like the only times I buy audiobooks is when I can't access them through my library or through
Scribd or something.
So I use Scribd a lot, which is a on-demand kind of service where you pay. You don't get to own them, but you get to listen to it. So a lot of times, if it's available on Scribd, then I don't have to buy it. So I only use, the reason why I rack up so many Audible credits is because I'm able to access most of the books that I want through Scribd or my library.
Right.
I recently canceled my Audible subscription. I'm going to try to remember not to sign up. Like I always feel like I convince myself that it's useful and then I end up regretting it. The other thing is that what I found is a lot of times because I like to read books in multiple formats, a lot of times if you bundle the ebook and audiobook through Amazon, it's cheaper than an Audible credit, or it's like a little bit more than the Audible credit, but you get both. And so I'm trying to remind myself, like, that's the best way for me usually, it depends on the book, to get audiobooks from Amazon is to bundle it with the ebook. And you don't have to have an Audible account to do that. So
that's helpful to know.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That was the last question. So it worked out that we split it into two parts.
Yeah, this one took a long time.
But let us know your answers to a lot of these or your thoughts on all of these things. I feel like everybody wants to know who reads ahead or skip. Are you one of those people that goes to the last page, reads the ending, and then has to work your way through?
Yeah, no judgment if you do that.
Yeah, truly. I mean, Jade will judge you if you break the spine or you.
Only secretly.
Besides that, no judgment.
Before we go, I want to show you guys real quick. I was saying that it started snowing here. Justin sent me this picture of Toby in the snow.
Oh,
Isn't that cute?
So cute.
Snow on him.
you should put that to your Instagram. You should
Oh,
put
that's
that
a
up.
good idea.
Yeah. Everybody loves dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Luna Bear is grumpily waiting for me to be done. Yes, I know, Luna. Oh my gosh. Okay, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed our chat and the random dog appearances. And we'll see you all later.
See you next time.